Jason Myers had always dreamed of living in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood. The kind with American flags on porches, trimmed hedges, and friendly waves from neighbors walking golden retrievers. When he closed on a cozy 2-story in Oak Hill Estates, it felt like the perfect start after a messy breakup and a draining job change. The streets were clean, the lawns looked cloned, and the HOA seemed to keep everything running like a polished machine. His housewarming welcome was short-lived. On his first day, a package from his sister, some cookware, and a custom home suite home mug never arrived. Amazon marked it as delivered. There was no sign of it. Jason brushed it off as a shipping glitch. But then it happened again. And again. 2 more packages disappeared in the first 2 weeks. One a set of Bluetooth speakers for his home office, the other a $60 kitchen knife set. All were marked delivered. All were gone. He checked with the mail carrier. Left it right on the porch, the woman insisted, glancing toward the neighbor's house with a strange look. Same place every time. That neighbor happened to be Karen Whitmore. She was the self-appointed queen of Oak Hill Estates, complete with a clipboard, weekly HOA emails, and a smug smile that rarely reached her eyes. Karen lived directly across the street, always watching from her 2nd-story bay window, like some suburban gargoyle. She never waved. Instead, she made a point to note whenever Jason's garbage bins weren't aligned with the curb, or if his garage door stayed open too long. He tried to be neighborly. One afternoon, he mentioned the missing packages while trimming his hedge. Her eyes narrowed. Porch thefts are rare here. I'd suggest checking with the postal service, or maybe not leaving expensive-looking boxes out in plain view. She added with a smirk, also, just so you know, your front doormat violates HOA color standards. Brown is technically not on the approved list. Jason blinked. My doormat? Page 14 of the guidelines, she said crisply, already turning back to her house. Later that day, he found a formal HOA violation notice on his door, complete with a printed photo of the offending mat. By then, Jason's trust in his picture-perfect neighborhood had already begun to crumble. And what made it worse was the creeping feeling he couldn't shake. Someone was watching him. Not just observing, targeting. He installed a video doorbell, hoping for answers. But the next morning, when he checked the footage, the device had mysteriously gone offline at 3:07 a.m. Right when a motion alert had been triggered, someone had tampered with it. That much was obvious. He mentioned it in the community group chat, carefully, vaguely, asking if anyone else had noticed packages disappearing. Karen responded within minutes. Let's not spread paranoia. Oak Hill is a safe community. If you're having trouble adjusting, the HOA has a welcome guide you may find helpful. Jason didn't reply, but he screenshotted everything. That night, while sitting in the dark with a mug of tea, he watched Karen's silhouette pacing behind her curtains, back and forth. Occasionally, she stopped to stare directly out her window. Across the street, right at him, the neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, and for the first time since moving in, Jason wasn't wondering how to make his new house feel like home. He was wondering what Karen was hiding. Jason tried to play it cool the next few days, pretending he hadn't noticed anything strange. He waved politely at Karen when she was outside pruning her rose bushes, meticulously snipping at already perfect stems with a precision that bordered on obsessive. She returned the wave with her trademark tight-lipped smile, the kind that somehow felt like both a greeting and a threat. But Jason was done playing nice. At the next HOA meeting, held in the community clubhouse, he brought it up, carefully, without pointing fingers. I've had 3 packages disappear since I moved in, he said, standing near the back of the room. I'm not the only one. I think we need to address porch theft. A few heads nodded. A woman near the front whispered something to her husband. Karen, sitting at the head of the table in a pale blue blazer, folded her hands with exaggerated calm. There's no evidence of theft in this neighborhood, she said smoothly. I suggest you speak directly with your delivery service. Our community has security cameras at all entrances, and we've never had any recorded incidents. Oak Hill Estates has a stellar safety record. Jason opened his mouth, then closed it. The tone in her voice wasn't defensive. It was final. A warning, thinly veiled beneath politeness. Later that evening, after returning from a late-night grocery run, Jason pulled into his driveway and immediately saw something taped to his front door. He climbed out of the car, heart sinking, a bright yellow slip with the HOA logo at the top. Notice of violation, lawn maintenance infraction. He stared at it, baffled. His lawn was pristine, freshly cut 2 days ago. Then he read the line below. Excessive lawn growth exceeding HOA standard blade, height 2.5 inches. Correction required within 48 hours. Jason laughed bitterly. This wasn't enforcement. It was retaliation. He went inside and flipped on his porch light to double-check the footage from his newly installed motion-activated camera. This one was hidden under the eave, not visible from the street. He pulled up the feed. At 9:46 p.m., just 20 minutes earlier, someone had approached his door. A figure wearing a visor, white gloves, and a sweatshirt with the HOA logo. Karen, she'd taped the notice, stepped back, and taken a photo with her phone. But before leaving, she lingered, tilting her head slightly toward the corner of the porch, where Jason's now missing package had once sat. She looked straight at the camera, dead center. Her eyes narrowed, and then she walked off into the night like nothing had happened. Jason felt a chill creep into his spine. The next morning, another resident, an older man named Leonard from 2 doors down, knocked on Jason's door. I saw your post in the group chat, he said quietly. I've lived here 8 years. Lost a package last Christmas. Karen told me it was probably misdelivered. USPS confirmed it never was. I let it go, but... He glanced around. You're not wrong to be suspicious. Jason leaned closer. Have you seen anything? Leonard hesitated, then nodded. A couple months ago, I saw her moving a stack of packages from her trunk into her garage. Not hers. Different names. I thought it was a drop-off or something, but now... Jason felt his stomach twist. Later that night, his doorbell rang. No one there. Just a second HOA violation slip, fluttering on the mat, this one. Read, trash bins not retrieved from curb within 1 hour of collection. But trash day wasn't until tomorrow. Jason had reached his limit after the second bogus HOA violation in 2 days. He stood on his porch, staring at the slip. The message wasn't about trash bins or lawn heights. It was crystal clear. Back off. Someone wanted him intimidated, silenced, and humiliated, and that someone was likely watching him even now. He tore the notice in half, walked inside, and sat down at his computer. It was time to set a trap. He ordered a cheap Bluetooth speaker online, the kind that would look tempting to steal. Then, he added a second item, a compact GPS tracker with a battery life of 72 hours and live mobile syncing. He'd used a similar one years ago to track his luggage on a cross-country flight. Now, it was going into a box marked Jason Myers and shipped to his address. When the package arrived 2 days later, Jason carefully opened it, inserted the tracker beneath a flap in the cardboard, resealed it with fresh tape, and wrote, in thick black Sharpie, Do not leave unattended. Expensive electronics. He didn't hide it. Quite the opposite. He wanted it to be seen. He placed the box squarely on his porch, just after noon, positioned it directly in front of the doorbell camera, and left it there as he left for the afternoon. In reality, he drove around the block and parked where he had a perfect view of his house through a pair of binoculars. The minutes ticked by. At 1:17 p.m., a jogger passed by. At 1:43, a postal truck rolled down the street, stopped 4 houses away, then turned off. Quiet returned. Then at 2:34 p.m., the trap was sprung. Jason's breath caught in his throat as a figure emerged from behind the hedges across the street, Karen, dressed in her usual pale visor and workout gear. She walked casually toward his porch. Glancing up and down the street, she stepped onto his walkway, hesitated, and then bent down. Jason snapped photos with his phone through the binoculars, each click capturing the scene as she picked up the box, cradled it under her arm, and walked briskly back across the street toward her house, never once glancing at the doorbell camera. She disappeared into her garage. The door closed behind her with mechanical finality. Jason's phone vibrated. Tracker alert. Movement detected. Location 218 Willow Bend. Doctor. His jaw clenched. That was her address. He activated the live GPS view. The blue dot pulsed, unmoving, now, inside Karen's home. Not just near it, in it. The proof was undeniable. She'd stolen it. But Jason wasn't ready to call the police just yet. He needed more. Something irrefutable. That night, under the cover of darkness, he left a second package, smaller, labeled wireless router, returned to manufacturer. Inside, a decoy router casing and a second GPS tracker. Again, it was taken the next afternoon. Again, the dot stopped at 218 Willow Bend. Jason compiled a folder. Photos, timestamps, GPS logs, and screen captures from the tracker's movements. He included footage from both of his security cameras. It was airtight. He didn't need a smoking gun. He had 2 flashing trackers sitting inside Karen's house, like blinking alarms. But what he didn't expect came next. At 8:03 p.m., while reviewing the footage, he received a notification, motion detected, backyard camera. He pulled up the feed. The image was grainy, but clear enough. Someone in a hoodie had walked into his backyard and was staring directly into the lens. Just before the feed cut out, Jason stared at the screen, adrenaline roaring in his ears. This wasn't just about stolen packages anymore. He was being hunted. Jason didn't sleep that night. He sat on the living room floor, a baseball bat by his side and the backyard, lights blazing bright. Every creak of the floorboards upstairs made his heart jump. Every passing car sent him scrambling to the window. The image from his cut-off backyard camera replayed in his mind. The hooded figure, the blank stare into the lens, and the sudden static. As someone was sending a message. He'd drawn the line, and now someone had crossed it. By sunrise, he had made a decision. He wasn't waiting anymore. With his evidence folder in hand, Jason drove to the local police station. The officer at the AI desk listened carefully as Jason explained, then leafed through the photos, GPS data, and video clips. Halfway through the file, his expression shifted from polite interest to sharp focus. You said both packages ended up at the same address. The officer asked. Jason nodded. 218 Willow Bend. That's her house. Karen Whitmore. The officer raised an eyebrow. The HOA president? She's been targeting me with bogus violations ever since I brought up the missing deliveries, Jason said. But this is proof she's been stealing packages. Not just mine, probably others too. The officer excused himself to speak with a supervisor. 20 minutes later, 2 detectives joined Jason in a small office. They took down his statement, made copies of everything, and asked him one crucial question. Do you still have the live GPS signal? Jason pulled up the tracker app on his phone. The blue dot blinked steadily. Still in her house. That was enough. We're going to send someone by, one detective said. You'll get a call if we need further clarification. Jason left the station with a swirl of adrenaline and anxiety churning in his gut. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know how fast. The answer came just 2 hours later. He was in his kitchen reheating leftovers when he spotted the flashing lights across the street, 2 squad cars, 1 unmarked vehicle, and Karen Whitmore standing in her driveway, arms crossed, voice raised in furious disbelief as officers approached her with a warrant. Jason couldn't hear what she was saying, but the body language told him everything. She was losing control. Officers disappeared into her house. 10 minutes passed, then 20. A third officer emerged holding a clear evidence bag, with his fake Bluetooth speaker inside. Another followed, carrying the wireless router box. Jason stepped onto his porch, phone in hand, pretending to scroll. But Karen saw him, their eyes locked. Her expression twisted. Part rage, part panic, part disbelief that he, the newcomer, had managed to bring the empire she ruled. With an iron clipboard crumbling down, an officer escorted her back into her house. Jason didn't know if she was being arrested or just questioned. He didn't care. For the first time since moving in, he felt like he could breathe. But the victory didn't last long. Later that evening, while checking the tracker app one last time, Jason noticed something strange. The second dot, the router package, was on the move again. Only this time, it wasn't inside Karen's house. It was traveling west. Fast. Jason stared, confused. Had she thrown it out, given it to someone? Then came the text. Unknown number. You made a mistake. Jason froze. That wasn't Karen's number. Someone else was involved. And they knew exactly who he was. Jason's hands trembled as he stared at the message. You made a mistake. It wasn't from Karen. He knew her number. This one was unlisted, anonymous. He traced the area code, local. And the moment he looked back at the GPS app, the dot was already miles away from Oak Hill Estates, moving west through side streets, toward the industrial outskirts of town. Jason grabbed his keys, stuffed his phone into his jacket, and jumped into his car. He wasn't calling the police, not yet. He needed to know what he was up against first. The tracker's route led him to a quiet, warehouse-lined street, half abandoned, where wind tossed scraps of newspaper and old soda cans across the cracked asphalt. According to the app, the signal had stopped behind a rusted chain-link fence at a structure marked Bayview Storage, private access only. Jason parked down the block, heart pounding. There were no security guards, no cameras he could see. Just a faded keypad lock on the gate and a long row of metal storage units. Why would Karen, suburban royalty, send a stolen package here? Jason ducked behind a dumpster across the street and zoomed in with his phone camera, taking photos of the unit number the dot was closest to, Unit 117. He stayed for another 30 minutes, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone, anyone, entering or exiting. But the place remained still, dead quiet. Then the dot moved again. Only this time, it was leaving the facility. Jason's stomach dropped. Whoever had the package had come and gone without him seeing a thing. He rushed back home, scanned the block nervously, and ducked into his house. Inside, he locked every door and window, double-checked the backyard lights, and finally sat in the dark with his laptop, reviewing the last footage from the doorbell cam before the package vanished. And there it was. Karen had taken the first package. Yes, but not the second. The router box. It had been taken by a man. Broad-shouldered, dressed in a postal worker's jacket. But the logo was wrong. The camera caught just enough of his face. Before he lowered his head, he wasn't a delivery man, and his eyes had looked up, directly into the camera, just like the figure in the backyard days earlier. Jason paused the footage. Same guy. That night, Jason stayed awake researching Karen's HOA history. That's when he found the rabbit hole. Karen had only been president of Oak Hill for 11 months. Before that, the previous president had resigned after a burglary scandal involving stolen keys to mailboxes. The incident had never made headlines. Just a quiet note in the HOA meeting minutes, buried in the archives. Jason dug deeper. 5 years ago, a family 3 blocks over moved out suddenly after repeated mail theft complaints. Before that, a retired couple claimed HOA violations were used to scare them out of their home. Pattern after pattern. This wasn't Karen working alone. It was a network, possibly an organized group, using HOA power, manipulation, and surveillance to control residents, and quietly funnel stolen goods for resale. And the man who took the router box, he wasn't just a thief, he was part of it. Jason's phone buzzed. Again, another message from the unknown number. You think this ends with her? A chill ran through him. He'd pulled one weed from the garden, but underneath Oak Hill Estates, something darker was growing. Jason barely slept. The anonymous messages weren't threats. They were warnings. Whoever was behind the package ring wanted him scared, off balance. It was working, but they'd made a mistake. They thought he'd back down. Instead, he went deeper. At dawn, Jason headed to the community library 2 towns over, not Oak Hill's HOA office, where surveillance might already be on him. He requested public HOA filings, property records, and complaint logs for Oak Hill Estates, digging through anything archived under Oak Hill HOA board. That's when he found it. A forgotten digital record, filed 5 years ago under the innocuous heading Special Board Meeting, Personnel Realignment. Jason clicked it, and a PDF opened, a single scanned page. It listed 3 names. Karen Whitmore, appointed interim president Samuel Reese, appointed HOA security consultant Jennifer DuPont, financial auditor, that name, Samuel Reese. Jason froze. He pulled up the footage again of the man who had taken the second package, the fake delivery man. Then he did a reverse image search, using a screenshot from the video. And there he was. Samuel Reese, former private security contractor, briefly employed by a property management firm 2 counties over, fired after accusations of extortion and theft, never charged. Jason's jaw clenched. He was being watched, manipulated, and maybe even targeted by a network. Inside the HOA, he emailed himself copies of everything, encrypted the files, and uploaded them to cloud storage. If something happened to him, someone would find the truth. Back at home, Jason paced the kitchen, trying to decide what to do. Call the cops again. They'd made their move with Karen, but would they believe she was only part of something bigger? Then, he remembered something Leonard, his elderly neighbor, had once mentioned. Every HOA president before Karen has left early. All of them. One even vanished overnight. Jason checked the neighborhood archives again. 3 former presidents. None stayed longer than a year. No farewell messages. No public statements. Just gone. He walked over to Leonard's house. The old man answered warily. Jason leaned in. I think Karen was only the face. There's someone else pulling the strings. A guy named Reese. Recognize the name. Leonard hesitated, then sighed. You need to leave it alone, he said softly. I tried to, 2 years ago. My wife, she started asking questions when her mail went missing. Next week, we got a fine every single day. Dead lawn, cracked driveway, a bird feeder that attracted too many squirrels. He looked up at Jason with tired eyes. We paid over $3,000 in violations before we stopped. Jason clenched his fists. Why didn't you go public? Leonard lowered his voice. Because we saw someone parked across from our house for 4 nights straight. And when I asked, Karen, she smiled and said, HOA watches out for its own. Jason left shaken but determined. That night, he printed copies of the files, loaded them into a plain manila envelope, and drove to the local newspaper's office. Dropping it into the anonymous tips box, he thought he was being cautious, but when he returned home, his living room window was cracked open. Jason stepped inside slowly, heart racing. Everything was silent. Then he noticed it. On the kitchen counter, a single, unmarked envelope. Inside a photograph, taken through a long lens, of Jason sitting in his car, outside the storage units, and a note, typed in cold font. One more step, and you disappear like the last guy. Jason looked around his house. The shadows seemed thicker. The silence, heavier. They weren't just watching him. They were already inside. Jason stared at the photograph, the icy message echoing in his mind. One more step, and you disappear like the last guy. Who was the last guy? The threat felt real, personal, the kind that could freeze blood. Determined to find out, Jason turned back to Leonard's stories and Oak Hill's hidden history. He visited the local records office, digging into old newspapers, police reports, and HOA meeting minutes from the past decade. The name that kept appearing was Mark Ellison. Mark was a resident who had once spoken out publicly about HOA abuses 2 years before Karen's presidency. He filed complaints about suspicious package theft and overzealous violation notices, but shortly after, Mark disappeared. No one saw him leave. No goodbye note, no forwarded mail. The police had ruled it a voluntary disappearance, but rumors whispered otherwise. Whispers of intimidation, maybe worse. Jason's stomach tightened. He called Leonard again, who reluctantly confirmed. Mark tried to expose them. Then one day, he just vanished. His wife left town. The house sat empty for a year until it sold quietly. Jason decided to visit Mark's old home, now occupied by a new family, but with the same worn mailbox. Late afternoon, he knocked on the door. A woman answered. A friendly neighbor. Jason explained his concern. She hesitated, then whispered, "People here talk about the HOA like it's a shadow government. They control everything." Mark got too loud. The HOA came down hard. Jason asked about the house. We don't know what happened inside, but strange things were seen. Cars parked all night. Strange visitors. Then one day, everything stopped. Chills crawled down Jason's spine. He drove home, the weight of the truth settling like a stone. This wasn't just petty theft or neighborhood squabbles. It was something darker. An organized syndicate hiding behind HOA rules, using fear and power to silence dissent. That night, Jason's phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Stop digging, or you'll be next. Jason's defiance surged. He wasn't about to back down. Instead, He contacted the local investigative reporter he'd seen covering suspicious community groups. He arranged to meet at a discreet cafe the next day, hoping to share his evidence and find an ally. When he arrived, the reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel, listened intently to Jason's story, scanning the files he brought. "This could be huge," she said quietly. "We need solid proof and someone on the inside." Jason nodded. "I have one lead, a man named Samuel Reese. He's more than just security. I think he's the enforcer." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "I'll start digging on him. Meanwhile, be careful. If the HOA has this much reach, they might already be watching you." Walking back to his car, Jason noticed a black sedan idling a few yards away. The windows were tinted, but he caught a glimpse of a familiar face inside. Samuel Reese. Jason's breath hitched. Before he could react, the sedan pulled away, slowly, deliberately, vanishing around the corner. Jason knew this was no coincidence. He was marked, but he wasn't alone anymore. With Rachel's help, Jason vowed to expose Oak Hill's darkest secrets, even if it meant risking everything. Jason's heart pounded as he sat in the cafe with Rachel, the reporter. Every passing minute felt like a countdown. The black sedan and Reese's shadow had made one thing clear. Oak Hill's HOA was watching, and they weren't going to stop, but Jason was ready. Rachel had spent the last 48 hours digging into Reese's background, uncovering bank records, shell companies, and ties to a larger network of shady security firms specializing in community management. She also located hidden cameras linked to the HOA's surveillance system, not just on Jason's street, but scattered throughout Oak Hill estates. With the help of a tech-savvy friend, Rachel planned a live expose, an in-depth news segment, to air that night. Jason had gathered everything: the GPS logs, the footage of Karen stealing packages, the photo of Reese disguised as a delivery man, Leonard's testimony, and records of vanished residents. But the key was getting Reese and Karen on record. They set a trap. Jason agreed to a private HOA meeting under the guise of surrendering. Rachel's camera crew would be hidden nearby, ready to capture any wrongdoing. The night arrived. Jason stepped into the community clubhouse, heart hammering. Karen greeted him with a cold smile, Reese lurking in the background, his expression unreadable. As the meeting began, Jason spoke calmly but firmly. "I know everything. The stolen packages, the fake violations, the intimidation tactics, and the people who disappeared." Karen's smile faltered. Reese's eyes darkened. Suddenly, Jason pulled out a small speaker and activated it. The room filled with a recorded audio of Reese instructing Karen on how to intimidate residents and coordinate the theft ring. Karen gasped. Reese lunged forward, but before he could reach Jason, Rachel and her crew burst in. "Caught on camera, Reese," Rachel called out, holding up her phone, streaming live. Panic swept across the room. Reese tried to flee, but officers, alerted earlier by Rachel, blocked the exits. Karen stood frozen, her facade crumbling. The evidence was overwhelming. In the following days, news of the Oak Hill HOA scandal exploded. Investigations revealed a wide-reaching criminal enterprise that had preyed on residents for years. Karen and Reese faced multiple charges: fraud, theft, and conspiracy. But the biggest shock came during Reese's interrogation. He confessed there was a silent partner, someone even higher up, who had orchestrated much of the operation behind the scenes. The twist? It was the town's mayor. The mayor had used the HOA as a front to launder money and control local real estate, silencing anyone who threatened his empire. Jason watched the mayor's arrest on the news. a surreal mix of relief and disbelief washing over him. His neighborhood, once a prison of fear, began to breathe again. Neighbors thanked Jason for his courage. Leonard smiled, proud but cautious, warning that vigilance was still necessary. Jason looked out his window at the peaceful street, packages arriving safely, mailboxes full, and no shadow of threat. He knew this story wasn't just about stolen packages anymore. It was about standing up to power, exposing corruption, and reclaiming community, and Jason was ready for whatever came next.